We now return to Motor City Burning, a special presentation of WILS News.
This little song that I'm singing about, people you know is true. If you black and gotta work for a living now, this is what they would say to you. They says, if you was white, be alright. If you was brown, stick around. But as you black, oh brother, get back, get back, get back.
The explosion of July 1967 did not happen in a vacuum. While overtly, Detroit seemed to be truly the one major city that would escape the violence that had plagued Los Angeles, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Tampa, New York, and Newark, among others, covertly the city had been a simmering pot of economic, educational, and racial inequality for much of the last 4 decades.
You are about to know the thrill of seeing that which has never been seen before. You are about to enter a beautiful, exciting, wonderful new world, the world of 1960.
On December 14th and 15th, 1960, the United States Commission on Civil Rights held hearings in Detroit. During those hearings, the city's racially unbalanced standing in housing, jobs, education, and in the recruitment of blacks into the Detroit Police Department came into the light. At the time, 49.3% of white Detroit workers and 20.7% of black workers were considered white-collar. Meanwhile, 70.2% of black workers filled the ranks of operatives, laborers, or service workers. Only 35.2% of whites held those same blue-collar jobs.
It's Oldsmobile's new J2 Rocket, most exciting new engine on the road. With a completely new fueling system, the J2 Rocket is like 2 engines in one. 2-stage rocket action gives you more economy when you want it, more power when you need it.
While many blacks had found work in the auto industry during the World War II labor boom, UAW President Walter Reuther told the Commission in 1960 that his union had never been able to persuade one major auto company to agree to a fair employment clause with the UAW. Reuther admitted that the union had failed in their responsibility of getting minorities into skilled worker positions. One example of this disparity was that while over 25% of workers in Chrysler's Detroit area plants were black, there were only 24 blacks among the 7,425 skilled workers on the Chrysler payroll.
Me and a man was working side by side. This is what it meant. They was paying him $1 an hour, and they was paying me 50 cents.
Not surprisingly, the income level of white workers versus non-white workers was immense. In 1959, a study conducted by the Detroit Commission on Community Relations revealed that the median family income for whites was $7,050. For non-whites, it was just $4,370, a difference of 38%. During the 1950s, Detroit's higher-earning white population decreased by 23.4%, while the number of non-whites grew by 37.7%. Not only did this influx of population make less money, and hence produce less tax revenue for the city, they were also much younger than the exiting residents. By 1960, 42.8% of Detroit's black population was 19 years of age or younger. As the new decade wore on, this larger, younger, and poorer population would stress Detroit's housing, education, and civil services to the breaking point. During the 1950s and early 60s, Detroit's black population began to migrate north and west as their old Black Bottom and Paradise Valley communities fell to make way for I-75, the Lodge Freeway, and other urban renewal projects. The destruction of these communities caused a great deal of friction between the government and the black community. As the migration was underway, the Detroit Board of Education redrew school districts to keep a Motown version of separate but unequal intact. By the early 60s, almost a decade after the Supreme Court's Brown v. Board of Education decision, and over a decade before forced busing became a 4-letter word in Michigan, Detroit's education system was highly and systematically segregated. 106 of Detroit's public schools had a 90% or more white student body. Meanwhile, 78 other schools had a 90% or more black student body. The skin color of the teachers in these facilities fell along the same segregated backdrop. For decades, one of the most hotly contested areas of concern in Detroit was the issue of housing. After the city's 1943 race riot, it became official city policy to preserve racial segregation in the neighborhoods and in the construction of public housing projects. Despite federal court orders and a mostly hollow effort by the Detroit Housing Commission to implement a policy of open occupancy in its projects, little had changed on this front by 1960. Strikingly, between 1930 and 1960, Detroit's black population actually became more isolated from their white neighbors. In 1930, slightly more than half of Detroit's black population lived in white-majority neighborhoods. By 1960, That number had fallen to just 15.2%. During the 1950s, Detroit and many other northern industrial cities were plagued by the real estate industry practice of blockbusting. John Sinclair, a longtime Detroit resident, explains how it worked.
They had the blockbusting scandals, where the realtors would frighten the white citizens into selling them their houses cheap, and then they would turn them over to black people, and then they would go to the remaining whites and say, the blacks are over in your neighborhood, you got to get out. We'll take your house for you.
Of course, real estate agents had the most to gain financially from whites deserting a city block. After putting in the there goes the neighborhood fear into white homeowners, the agents often bought the houses for less than market value, then sold them to black families at a profit. Sometimes, they also provided financing, making more money on the mortgage. If the new black family couldn't meet the mortgage payments, the real estate agent would simply call in the loan, have the sheriff seize the house, and then sell it again, earning even more profits. In some circles, this would be called racketeering. In the urban housing market of the 1950s, it was called big business.
We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only.
Also in the fabulous 50s, new housing was essentially a non-option for all but the most well-to-do of Detroit blacks. During the decade, only 3% of the 330,000 new housing units built in the Metro Detroit area were made available to them. This, of course, left black homeowners in the hand-me-down dwellings of the fleeing white population. By 1960, while 69.6% of white Detroiters lived in homes built before 1939, 91% of non-whites lived in pre-1939 homes. In addition, the median value of those pre-1939 homes was 23.5% less for a black owner than a white owner. Not only were Detroit's black neighborhoods highly contained, many of them, especially in the poorest areas, were bursting at the seams. In 1960, the population of the 12th Street area, the epicenter of the 1967 riot, averaged 21,376 people per square mile. That number was almost double the city's average.
The Central Mall is flanked by a well-balanced selection of retail stores in every field and price bracket, which provides all customers with the most complete comparative shopping in the entire area. And there is plenty of free parking, over 5,000 individual parking spaces.
Another one of the complaints among Detroit's black population, aside from those involving housing and education, was the economic exploitation they suffered at the hands of the neighborhood merchants. In a 1968 post-riot survey conducted by the Detroit Archdiocese, which was the biggest local shopper survey conducted in the United States to that point, showed that inner-city residents paid about 20% more for their grocery items than suburban shoppers.
76 fine stores in all at the present time, which will expand to approximately 100.
Considering that those same city residents spent upwards of 40% of their incomes on food, the extra cost impacted them substantially. The study brought one of the black community's oldest complaints into the light, proving it to be much more than just urban legend. However, all of these problems paled in comparison to the decades-old boiling stew of hatred that existed between Detroit's blacks and the city's police department. What was the relationship between the Detroit Police Department and the black community really like? And what did the Kavanaugh administration attempt to do to mend it? That and more when Motor City Burning returns.